So it's night. It's night, and outside, the locked doors and shuttered windows, the streets are dark. And even though it's dark, the streets are still noisy because it's still festival time. And you know that when you put another couple of tens of thousands of pilgrims in the city, it's going to be noisy. So as you gather together with the other disciples in this hidden place where you hope you will be safe and undiscovered, you listen to the noise, and you know the darkness. And you also know that if it's dark and tumultuous outside, it's nowhere near as dark and tumultuous as it is inside in your own hearts, in your spirit. Because this is that third day. This is that Sunday, and you and the disciples are still reeling from the horror of the crucifixion and the death of Jesus just a couple of days before. And you're still mourning his bloody and brutal death at the hands of, let's face it, some of your own countrymen. And now you're trying to process the fact that somebody's telling you, people are telling you that his body has been removed from the tomb. Or you thought he would at least be safe after death. And more than that, you're trying to come to grips with the fantastic story that this woman, this Mary Magdalene, has been yammering about to anybody who would stand still and listen. That Jesus somehow was alive. More than that, that Jesus had appeared to her. He appeared to her, a woman. And he had told her to come and share the good news that he was alive, to share that news with the disciples. And you set aside this incredible notion that somehow Jesus is alive. It's impossible to believe that he would have imparted this important a message to a woman to tell his friends and disciples. I mean, seriously, he would more likely have told a Samaritan or a Gentile such momentous news than he would have told a woman. It made no sense. And then it's into this scene, this moment of chaos and uncertainty about what or who to believe, that Jesus appears. There's no knock at the door. There's no puff of smoke, in a magician's spark of light. It's all of a sudden, in a way you can't understand or even begin to fathom, Jesus is there among you. Jesus appears to you and he says simply, Shalom. Peace be with you. And against all the odds, all of a sudden you are at peace. Suddenly everything you thought you knew about this world, everything that you thought was a certainty has been dumped out, and you've been dropped into this radically changed and different world. A world where dead men come to life and women are trusted as messengers. And it's just a topsy-turvy place, and despite all that, when Jesus says, Shalom, it brings peace to you. For no better reason than Jesus said it. That was the scene in the gospel. Imagining that first night is almost, to me, it is almost as exciting as thinking about that first morning, that Easter morning. Because here is where the rubber meets the road. so to speak. Because up to this point, it was an appearance here and an appearance there, and you could kind of, if you were a skeptic, you could write it up to people imagining things. But here on this first night, this Easter night, Jesus himself appears to all of his disciples. Well, almost all of them. There was still the problem of Thomas, called Didymus. He wasn't there. He missed the memo. Wasn't at the meeting. It'd be interesting to know what he was doing, but we're not told. Now, in Aramaic, the language that Jesus would have spoken, his name was probably Thomas, which comes to us as Thomas. In Aramaic, it was Thomas. Translated into Greek, it was Didymus. And both of those translate into English as the twin. Now, if you have an inquiring mind, the question might occur to you at this point, so if he's the twin, whose twin is he? So you have one twin, you generally have another. And if you know anything about biblical scholarship, both professional and amateur scholarship, you won't be surprised to discover that there are dozens and dozens of theories about whose twin he was. There is no shortage of speculation out in the world about who Didymus' twin brother was. For me, far and away the most interesting hypothesis was that Didymus was actually the twin brother of Jesus. Early Gnostic Christian writings up until about the 3rd century suggested that there was this mystical connection between Jesus and Didymus. And that led some to believe that Didymus was literally the twin brother of Jesus. If you think about it, that might explain why he was so reluctant to accept the fact that Jesus had risen from the dead. Because, after all, if he was Jesus' twin brother, he's already getting left out of the Christmas story. He's getting left out of a lot of other stuff, and now Jesus rises from the dead. I mean, how fair is that? Who do you think is going to get mentioned in the Christmas letter? Holiday. It's not Didymus. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to believe. Probably not. Other suggestions are that he just looked really similar to Jesus. And the other disciples kind of took that on as almost like a joke. They said, oh, there's your twin, Didymus. And there are other suggestions that because of his deep spiritual connection to Jesus and his deeper understanding of Jesus' teachings, that somehow that made him more of a spiritual twin of Jesus. And that one seems reasonable as well. Since the idea of an actual twin brother to Jesus just opens up a whole big can of worms, I'm thinking that's not what it was. But any of these others seem reasonable. Maybe he just looked like Jesus. In my own family, our son Andrew, calling you out. Yeah. He grew up alongside the daughter of a friend of ours, Emily Walter. And over the years, they became known as the twins. So maybe it was something like that. Maybe little Didymus and little Jesus grew up in Nazareth and just became twins. All it boils down to is we don't know much about it. But we do know a few things about Didymus. We know that he was a man devoted to Jesus. Earlier in John, This is when Jesus had been told that his friend Lazarus is sick. And Jesus is kind of killing time. And Lazarus. But eventually Jesus announces his plan. He said, you know what? Lazarus is sick. I'm going back to Judea. And all of the other disciples try to talk him out of it because it's dangerous. They're in Galilee. They're relatively safe. But when you go back to Judea, closer to Jerusalem, that's enemy territory. And every other disciple is trying to wave him off. And Jesus says, no, I'm going. Lazarus needs me. It's Didymus who speaks up and says, well, if he's going, then we all may as well go and die with him. And we also know that Didymus was a straight shooter. He didn't mince words, unlike some of the other disciples. During the time preceding the crucifixion, earlier in the Gospel of John, Jesus is at that point in his ministry where he knows his time is coming, and he's just trying to impart as much information as he can to the disciples. He's doing what, when I worked at UL, what we used to call a brain dump. He's just trying to tell them everything that he thinks they need to know. And of course, the disciples, being who they are, they're giving him a lot of the fish mouth. You know, they just don't know how to stop it. And in John 14, Jesus is telling them about God's house having many mansions or many rooms. And he says he's going to prepare a place for them, and the disciples are just looking at him like, Didymus. Didymus is the one who actually raises his hand and says, you know, Jesus, I can see your lips moving, but I don't have any idea what you're saying. And he goes over it again and tries to explain. So he's not afraid to ask questions. So how does this loyal friend and follower go from being Didymus to what I call today Doubtymus? Greek word I made up. How does he go from being that loyal disciple to being the one who's always known for the rest of eternity as Doubting Thomas? Some of it's just bad press. But to appreciate the answer, I think we really need to look at what he was doubting. We know Didymus was a pragmatist. He saw what happened to Jesus. Along with the other disciples, most likely he saw it from a distance, because none of them were crowding around, trying to see what was going on. He saw it from a distance, but he saw. He saw what they did to his friend and his teacher, and it horrified him. Made him ill. And what he saw, he knew there was no bouncing back from. You don't get treated that way and then just bounce back and say, hey, all better now. Then you think, well, he did see Lazarus, after all, come back from the dead. He did see Lazarus kind of shuffle out of the tomb, so he knew that it was possible. But then Lazarus had been sick. Jesus was beaten to a pulp and then nailed to a cross and then stabbed in the side. But maybe Didymus, in the back of his head, thought maybe it was possible. But it sure didn't seem likely. What was he doubting? I think he doubted the disciples. When you get down to it, I don't think Didymus doubted Jesus, I don't think he necessarily doubted the resurrection, but he wasn't ready to believe a bunch of guys who, like him, had cut and run from Jesus, had run away in the face of danger, and then watched from a distance as he was killed by the Romans and the Sanhedrin. Maybe he wasn't going to take their word for it that something as incredible and impossible as Jesus coming back from the dead had happened. If he was going to believe something like that, he would have to see, and as he says, touch Jesus himself. I think, in other words, he said to the disciples, no offense, guys, but I don't believe you. I'm not going to believe you until I see Jesus myself. Any of you ever watch a TV show called Psych? A couple? It was a comedy about a fake psychic detective. And they built one whole episode around the phrase, no body, no crime. And I think Didymus, or Doubtymus, I think what he said to the disciples was, no body, no resurrection. I don't see the body, I don't believe. And then, of course, a week later, we're told in the Gospel, Jesus does see. Didymus does see Jesus. And he does believe. Once Jesus is standing before him, he doesn't doubt his eyes anymore. He doesn't doubt anything, but he believes. So 2,000 years on, other than as a cautionary tale to believe in the resurrection, why does this story still resonate with us? You ask people about what they know from the Bible, many of them will at least be able to come up with Doubting Thomas, and they would have some idea. Why is that? I think because this little story mirrors human experience. It mirrors our own interaction and our own experience with the divine. Because we can sit in church every Sunday from now till the end of time, and we can go to Sunday school, and we can get confirmed, and we can hear all the stories, and we can learn all the lessons, and guys like me can stand up here and preach till we're blue in the face. And none of that is going to mean much of anything for anyone until they actually encounter Jesus for themselves. None of it means much of anything for any of us until we encounter God somehow. Until we have that moment of connection, that moment of grace, when we suddenly understand and know God's great love for us. When we suddenly understand that God has such deep love that he was willing to send his own son to die a criminal's death just on the off chance that we might embrace the lesson of the cross and the lesson of Easter and allow ourselves to be saved. That's love. And until we encounter that love, until we understand it, we still have our doubts. Once we do, we know. So I think on some level, at some point, we're all Doubtymus. Until that moment when we know it's for real. It's as real as a risen Savior and as real as a grace-filled God. It's as real as a love that's strong and deep enough to lift our hearts up to heaven. Each of us encounters that reality on our own time, in our own way. Sometimes through the work of others, sometimes through teaching, and sometimes it's just that moment alone in the dark. Suddenly God touches you, and you know that it's God, and you know that it's real. So on this second Sunday of Easter, I hope and I pray that each of us, and all of us, who have had that moment, I pray that we will share the moment that God touched us, that moment of connection with somebody else this week. I pray that we will share that love that we feel with someone who has not yet felt it. I pray that we'll share the joy that comes from knowing God with someone who is still in the darkness. That we will share our faith, our story, our encounter with God, so that someone else may see